Yo dudes, I know that last video was a little cringy. Let's just say that there's some pretty profound intergenerational differences of opinion and attitude in this country, mostly because the conditions at which we arose into adulthood were very much different because of major technological advancements, economic conditions, etc. So the parameters of the lens at which we see the world is very different. That's neither here nor there. The point of this video is to talk about what poor nations want. Why does this matter? Because they will be suffering the most immediate consequences of near-term human extinction, aka abrupt climate change. And so this article, I'm going to read just some snippets from this BBC News, climate change, no more excuses at COP26 from climate summit from poor nations. So they're like waving their finger, you better get your act together now because we're paying the ticket soon, and they will. I mean, this matters because places like Somalia, Bangladesh, I mean far-flung places of the world are going to be hit so hard, and they're going to experience devastating loss. Again, hundreds of millions of people don't have habitat, all the things they need to survive. By the way, shout out to Guy McPherson. If you haven't seen his latest video, United Nations admitting self-reinforcing feedback loop video, it's really good. I think it's one of his best videos. Okay, so 100 developing countries have set out their key negotiating demands ahead of the COP26 meeting in Glasgow. This is directly from BBC News. I'll put the link in the article. They say, quote, these include funding for poor nations to fight and adapt climate change, compensations for impacts they will be subjected to. Those backing the plan represent more than half the world's countries. Without progress on these points, they say that COP26 will be worthless and will end in failure. It's in November. It's one of the most important meetings since the Paris Climate Accord in 2015 was drawn up, and there's huge hopes. Look, remember guys, just remember, we're at 420 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere right now. 420, okay? That's undeniable. That's floating in the air. It's done.
Right on cue! Enjoy your last meal while you can. Nothing matters. Nothing has any consequence. Dance while
Go in your textbook of geological history and look at the last time the Earth was in 420 parts per million. So this is all fodder. This is all just fun to read. That this is like how they're floundering. This is like what they want. Well, the poor nations, understandably. So they say that, quote, I'm reading back from the article, an acceleration of net zero targets is urgently needed. At the failed Copenhagen COP in 2009, richer companies promised $100 billion in a year in climate finance by 2020, with increased annual sums from 2025. That target has not been met, said the developing country, and it needs fixing if they are to trust richer companies to keep what they negotiate. This fund is intended to help those lower countries fight. Skipping ahead here, in the report, the countries lay out what's termed fair share accounting, which allocates emission cuts based on historical responsibilities and the capacity to act. Under that scenario, the U.S., hear me, the U.S. would need to reduce emissions by 195% below 2005 levels by 2030. This could be made up to a 70% cut in domestic emissions plus $80 billion a year in support for developing countries. For the UK, a similar approach would see a 70% emissions cut by 2030 plus $46 billion a year in climate finance. $80 billion a year, cutting back 200% of our emissions. It's a joke. I really think that today's children are going to be the most angry and pissed off generation there ever was on planet Earth. Anarchy will reign. They will be so devastated by what's happening and that all this went on behind closed doors with like business executives on their Zoom calls and far-flung like properties over the world. Like, I'm not saying the Illuminati exists, but like, yeah, they know that what they set in motion was a train going high speed off the rails, and we're on it. And they're gonna feel it. We're all gonna feel it to crash. We're gonna lose habitat in a few years. Okay, go drink your tea, do some yoga. I'm going to a meditation retreat this weekend. I got another email about an intentional community. What an exciting year. I'll talk to you soon.